Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most important, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by an absolutely fantastic and patient group of people, starting with Refracted Curvature, Eli, Chocolate, Arwin, Brian, 10th Man, and a whole bunch of people in Gilded, which we all love. So, welcome one and all.
Hello.
Morning, everyone.
What a day. What a lovely day.
Adam and Neil didn't get a mention.
Yeah, Gilded is giving us the Discord treatment. I mean, don't we remember how Discord used to do this all the time?
No. Discord was always perfect, and I want to go back to it.
That's right. Except when you couldn't be heard and then had to re-log out and in again because your voice disappeared all the time.
No, Discord was perfect, and if I moan about how crap Gilded is, I can appeal to how much better that was. Shut up. I don't want to hear it. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
Well,
That was a myth.
Go on.
Go ahead, John.
I was going to say in the mathematics, it's below surface level, and so is the refracted one they talk about too. It's also below surface level, so they don't have anything to do with reality.
No evidence.
The
Well-
refracted what? The refracted Earth curve? I mean, when you say refracted, it sounds like you're talking about light, not a physical curve.
But
I'm talking about.
Hold on now. If the horizon isn't geometrical, then what is the sun going behind when it's going under?
What if the sun doesn't go behind anything? What if it just fades out,
What if the
sets
sun-
without going behind the horizon?
Well, then it's terrestrial refraction, of course, but in general, it goes down. So it goes behind the curve of the Earth. Right?
The refracted
No.
curve.
No.
Except when it doesn't.
Well, it can't be going behind the curve because in the math, that's below surface levels. No, that's not correct.
Well, none of it is true because in the celestial sphere model, the Earth is the center of the universe and it's motionless.
Well, there's something else that I pointed out with Polaris, but it's true for the rest of celestial navigation. Is that if they're claiming that the horizon is not geometric, that it's a refracted position that is always refracted at least 7/6 of the radius, then that means that they have obviously, as we've spoke about already, that what that is a physical change in the size of their globe. But then the 1.1508 ratio between nautical and statute miles won't work. It'll only work if your globe has a 3959 radius. It won't work if it's got over a 4,000 mile radius, which it would have with 7/6R. And remember, they often claim more than 7/6R. So God knows what size their globe is going to be tomorrow, or what size it is today. But it doesn't matter because the nautical to statute mile ratio will not work with 7/6R.
Brian, on that point, remember Andrew Thomas Young said that if you do the refraction calculation, then it would be at 1.32 miles rather than 1.2 miles at a 1-foot observer height. So even if you do what they say, look what happens. black swan still kicks them all over the place.
Yeah, but
Wait, don't you? Sorry, Brian. Go ahead.
no, you go talk. I could pop in a minute.
I was gonna say, don't you need R before you take R and put it into an equation?
Any evidence of the R value? Earth radius.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not.
Well,
If
this
there
is the
was-
whole,
If
No,
there
there's no
was an
evidence.
R, if there was an R, you couldn't measure an angle to the stars to calculate an R.
Yeah, if there was an R value measured for a globe Earth, then we would have the measurement. But we don't. We only have a value. It was never. Nobody in history has ever or will ever measure a radius to a globe Earth because we're not on one.
Because you can only do it if the Earth is actually flat. Because
That's right.
otherwise, if it was a ball, then it would not be that easy to try to measure that radius. Because you
we
don't
need at
have
the end with
a
the
flat
most
baseline.
important part of the argument. Indeed, you'll need a flat Earth for that. Any evidence that you can acquire an elevation angle measurement from a curved baseline?
well, a sextant would be useless if you had an R.
Yeah, you can't
Right,
get
so
an-
you can
No,
only
no.
calculate it on a flat plane.
There's no evidence that you can use or that you can measure an elevation angle off a curved surface. No evidence. It's not even something you need to come up with evidence for. It's a no-brainer. You know,
Brian, what's the equatorial plane?
it's a horizontal plane through the center of a sphere, the globe Earth.
And
Celestial sphere. No, it's through the center of a celestial sphere. It's not through
I
a globe.
agree with Brian. It's a no-brainer.
Well, no, the equatorial plane isn't. The equatorial plane isn't. That is actually claimed to be through the center of a globe Earth, not the celestial sphere.
You're both right, but John is more right.
I was about
Because
to
what
say,
they do,
hold on, who's right? But you're saying they're both
Well-
right. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. John's right because the origin is a flat plane under the dome of the heavens. Brian didn't mention that we're talking about Polaris in terms of its area of equal elevation, are we not? That would be the flat plane in the celestial sphere model. So tick, John's right. However, if you're going to claim that you've got the maps and the conversions and the projections, then you're going to describe how the sphere works within the celestial sphere model, wrapping a ball Earth around a flat plane, therefore putting a flat plane in the middle of a sphere, making Brian correct. Am I wrong?
well, let me
Yeah.
explain.
The word equatorial.
All right. Can anyone hear me?
We all hear
Yeah.
you.
Well, okay, I was in the middle of explaining. All right, so John is right because in the celestial sphere model, there is no dingleberry. It's your eyeballs are at that equatorial plane, which is the same as the celestial equator. It's just that disk right between the imaginary celestial sphere. Brian's right because when you put the surplus to requirement, the dingleberry Earth, then you have something there to look at where they intersect. So the equatorial plane meets up with the celestial equator and goes all the way to the celestial sphere. When they do celestial navigation, all of the angle vertex measurements come from the center point. Where would that be? That'd be that dingleberry cut in half where your eyeballs are.
It's
when
got a
you read
different
the
name. I thought
books-
you were wrong. I didn't want to correct you too soon. So it's not Dingleberry Earth in that regard. It's actually what we call the globe burger. So it's like the burger is the plane in the middle and then the globe's wrapped
Yeah.
around it.
That's
If
just
I
the
could just say
celestial
something.
sphere.
Yeah,
Just
the
for
celestial
that
sphere with the
little
plane in the
thing.
middle is like, the burger being the globe wrapped around the bun, which is, the outside edge of the sphere that's not used because the burger is what's used with a wrapping around it.
Well, if
if
I'm
I can-
allowed to finish,
Go on,
your
10th. We're all
eyeball,
rumpusing you. Everyone just clear the road. Go on, 10th.
your eyeball on the surface of the ocean, what is that representing when the navigator's 10 foot above on a sailboat with the sextant? He's got to do dip correction to get his eyeball on the surface of the ocean. Okay? That surface of the ocean is the equatorial plane. That is where the angle is measured from. They move it to the center of an imaginary ball. That's why Brian's right. But John's right, because there is no imaginary ball in the celestial sphere model. It's just your eyeball meeting at the celestial equator.
Well, even
I
hold on, hold on a sec, because there's one more thing. There is no globe Earth in the celestial sphere model.
That's what I'm saying. I agree with you. There isn't. There's just the celestial equator.
If I could just clear up.
Just get clarity for that. What you're saying, John, is that when they make that assertion, they're inserting the celestial sphere into the globe by bifurcating, whatever you call it, cutting it in half, and then putting it in. So they're massaging an after-the-fact globe model that's come from the celestial model into a depiction, but there is no globe model or globe of any description. There's the dome of the heavens. That's it in the celestial sphere model. Therefore, globe isn't existent in that model. When it's drawn in it, that's just them adding it to it, correct?
Right. The equatorial plane is just the plane running out to the horizon.
That's what that was
That's
really
incorrect.
But that would be the
that was the answer I was hoping for. You're saying it's incorrect. Let me just shout out Godzilla, Brian, then you can go ahead. Godzilla37, thank you very much for the super chat. He says, let's get a bit closer to my screen. Eading, was it Eading? Eading, it has had. I can't understand what you're saying with this. Eading, it had without R. Does anybody else understand that?
In reference to your burger
Reading.
problem.
Reading
Like
without
eating is reading without R.
Eading is had without R. Is what is
Yeah.
actually typed. I don't know, Godzilla, but I'm very grateful for the super chat. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate your support. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I'm sorry about it. I was asked originally about the equatorial plane. There is no equator, so there can't be an equatorial plane in the celestial sphere model. There is only an equator in the globe model. The celestial sphere model is not a sphere. It's a personal apparent dome that's created by, but it's not even a dome. It's just depicted that way due to them using a protractor. It's an apparent dome model that's based on perspective. So there is no equator. There's no center point to the celestial sphere. As Nathan, your celestial sphere, where you're living and where I'm living tonight, will be two different ones. They'll be personal. Whereas the
nobody
equator,
claimed that.
the
Okay,
equator,
no, I got that. Go
equator,
ahead, John.
Yeah.
Nobody claimed that there was a center point. That's their claim.
Yeah, but I was asked about
But of a flat
equatorial
plane model saying, with Polaris 90 degrees overhead, and it's just the tangent plane if you were on that point, and they call it the equatorial plane, but there is no sphere in that except for the celestial sphere.
So what is that
There
model?
is no globe model.
So if we're going to refer to it, and Brian's saying that it's only from your personal space, when you say celestial sphere model, what are you talking about then?
The celestial sphere, the arc of the, you're talking about a model.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Talking
What
about
is that model
angle
then?
measurements from your position, right? That's just taken from as if you were directly below Polaris.
That's what I started with. I said it's an area of equal elevation for Polaris, right? What I'm getting at is, are the celestial sphere models that we presented merely an equatorial plane as we describe it because we've got a globe model, therefore it's only ever Polaris-centric because that's the equator? That's the question. I'll just read out Godzilla's response because it makes more sense, a lot more sense now. Actually, can I get it on screen? He says, I'm going to miss it going on screen now. Hold on. Have I caught it? Why is it going up? There it is. He says, Eading is hard without R. In other words, Eading is hard without R. Jeez. That's what he's trying to say. I mean,
And you're proving
obviously,
his point because you can't even read it without the R being where it's supposed to be.
I think
So
the
you're proving his
intention
point.
was if he writes it without the R's in it, and we go, "What the hell are you babbling about?" When he follows it up and puts the R's in, it suddenly makes sense. Making his first chat make sense, but without the second chat, it doesn't make sense. Therefore, it's a paradoxical super chat, which is next level stuff. There, Gordzella. It's gone from very, very underwhelming super chat to exceeding all expectations. Thank you very much for your support.
The celestial sphere is
Nah, I
a
got the first one. Sorry, Tom.
Well,
Is an
look at
imag-
the smarty brain on you.
Shout out to Godzilla.
it's an imaginary bubble that surrounds the Earth onto which all the stars are positioned. It's imaginary. It's not real. You know, the picture we show of a protractor, and it's got that baseline. That's what they have. They double it to make the dingleberry. So that dingleberry doesn't exist. There is no globe Earth. And when you're looking at the stars, you're getting an angle. And so you need a baseline. So there's your equatorial plane, as they would have it called. But that's just your flat plane that we live on. And then
No, I
you got
get
the
that.
arc of the
But it's
proton. You got the arc of the
polar-centric.
proton.
My question is more specifically about if I went and dug out a celestial sphere model or depiction thereof, it would merely be polar-centric, correct?
Yes. Yes,
Right.
that's why I said they're both right, because they're both coming at it from a different perspective of answering the question.
You're
And-
all
No
missing
globe
something.
in the
I
celestial
get
sphere
that.
model.
I get that. My hope is that we elucidate this for the audience. So yes,
Yeah,
Right.
Can I please add some clarity? You
Yes,
keep on
please do.
using words like equatorial, which is equator, equatorial, a center, and celestial sphere. No, it is not a sphere. It is an apparent dome based on perspective and using the model of a protractor. There is no celestial sphere, because you're begging the question when you say equatorial, and you're begging the question when you say sphere for a globe Earth. There is
That's
no
why-
sphere.
That's why I
There's-
said you're right. That's why I said you're right, because it's imaginary. So again, when we're talking and explaining it, you have to take a position, role play. What role am I playing? Am I playing Brian, who's totally undressing the lie? Then you're right, the way you just said it. Am I playing someone who's explaining with the language they've put into the textbooks? Then I'm right. But there is no such thing, because it's imaginary.
Yeah, well, a celestial sphere
Hold on.
model would require a sphere Earth.
No, it
You know what
wouldn't.
I mean?
No, it wouldn't.
Why do you,
That's
how,
false.
how do you have a sphere? What good is the underneath of it if you never underneath it? If you know what I mean?
No,
The celestial
the
sphere model
celestial
is not
sphere
a sphere.
model. Celestial sphere model only requires a protractor and a flat plane. Earth.
Yeah, but
Well,
it's
no.
not a sphere.
You're getting too pedantic here. It's not a sphere. In fact, it's geocentrism, because the Earth is motionless, so there goes the sphere, and it's geocentric. The Earth is the center, so both those go against the globe, model anyway. So they're using it because it works, but they say, well, it's not really that way. We go around the sun. Well, then why don't you use that model? Well, it doesn't work that way. So we have to put the Earth in the middle. So you see, when they lie, they have to make up stuff. And then Brian is just catching them on all the stuff they're making up.
Well, I would like to point out, I'm not going to say that a model doesn't exist that they've been using for celestial navigation. I won't be doing that.
Yeah, but it's the celestial protractor model, not the celestial sphere, if you understand what I mean.
When
There
you
is no-
complete the southern hemisphere, it's of the northern hemisphere of the celestial sphere. And then they have the southern hemisphere of the celestial sphere. And they just glued two flat planes together to do it. Has nothing to do with the globe Earth. I don't know why you said that.
Because we're required to be a sphere. We don't ever see that much sky. We only
No, but-
see our local sky. If I could see,
No.
if I look up, when I look up in the nighttime, do I see all the sky you see, John? No. And you don't see all the sky I see, because we're in two different parts
No.
of the world. So
Yeah,
the
but it does
celestial,
not require it.
so that what the
It-
celestial, let me finish a second. The celestial sphere model is not a sphere. It's a local protractor model. That's what it really is.
The model
That's my
of it
point.
is spherical. When you plot out all the points that they have, it's spherical because they're using the outside of a protractor. And if you put two protractors back to back, you get
You have a globe.
You get
You have a globe.
No, you don't.
Isn't that a
Yeah, you do.
circle?
No, you have
You have a
two
little
flat
globe. That's
planes.
the problem. That's the point I'm trying to
No,
make.
you don't.
This
No,
celestial
you don't.
sphere part comes from a globe. Then
Oh my
back
God,
engineering
no,
it
you
into a
don't.
globe.
You guys are talking
No,
two different
if you haven't applied the
arguments.
Haberstein formula, you do not have a globe yet. You have a flat plane with a celestial sphere. That's all you have at that point. You don't have a globe. I don't know why you keep saying that.
Because to me, it's begging the question. That is not what we see. It's a personal protractor model. That's what it is.
It's a model, Brian. It's not claimed to be reality until you do that and say that it's a globe model. It's not a globe model.
Well, to have a north and south hemisphere, it needs to be and to be used that way. You need to be viewing things from a sphere out at the center of it.
Incorrect.
You both are on different points of the same argument. That's the problem. And you're both right when you describe it from the perspective you're both describing it from. Just realize all you've got is one baseline and perspective.
Nathan, what have you got to say on it as a final word, or Adam?
Well, I could summarize both your points because you're both right from where you're. John's right from where he's coming from. He's absolutely right. You're absolutely spot on from where you're coming on. What you've got is you're living on an irregular plane, and your vision is your personal dome vision, basically the way your eyes work. And you need elevation angles, so that means you're on a plane. Now they've created a celestial sphere model, which they immediately say is imaginary. So it's not real. Okay, then they put in the word equator to describe your baseline. The equator is your baseline. But then they put the second half of that protractor on the bottom and put a globe in their, pictures. And then say there's something underneath, there's something above. Well, that doesn't exist.
Yeah, but I'm trying to define it for what it really is. It's a personal celestial protractor model. That's what it really is.
You're right. You're absolutely right. But John's right from where he's coming from. So it's just a higher argument at a different level of deconstructing the lie. Let's put it that way.
But if you call it a celestial protractor model and you put two protractors together, right, that measure 360, right? Just go ahead and let me finish. And you put those two together and you make a sphere. Why does it matter that you call it the celestial sphere model? Or are we just becoming triggered by the word sphere and we're assuming globe?
Well, that would mean that somebody using that, let's just say if they're using that model, what you're basically stating is someone else can be upside down antipodal from them using the model at the other end. Do you understand what I mean? That's not reality of what it is.
If you reify that model, you'll end up coming to that false conclusion. And that's also why the assert antipodal positions is a proof of a flat plane.
Yeah, but as soon as you start putting those two protractors together, you've already walked into Globeville. That's my point.
No, you haven't. No,
I think to call it the celestial sphere model is incorrect.
Adopt a flat plane at that point. I think as long as you remind them of that, they'll never address it.
Yeah, you are using the center point to get the angle. I'm not stating any different from that.
The baseline. We're talking about the baseline, not the center point. Baseline is the Earth.
The center baseline, right? But there is only a center baseline because you're making a sphere out of it. In reality, you're just using the horizontal baseline we live on and taking angular measurements to celestial bodies within your local area.
That's a celestial sphere model when you want to depict that and try to explain it to anybody. That you'll come up with the celestial sphere model. If you're going to use those.
Why do we need to put two protractors together? Why would we ever need to do that when we'll never be antipodal to ourselves? That's my point. Why would you do it?
Well, there's those 2 points of rotation in the sky, so they probably, you know,
Yeah, but they're
assume
not
falsely
antipodal.
that they're. Of course, they're not. Like I said, but they still have to assume it's a flat plane to assume that.
I'm not arguing that point. I'm just arguing that our terminology for it, we're not describing it. We're describing it as it's being described to us over the course of time. But that is not a correct description of what it is as an actual model in use.
Right, but
When you experience it.
To say that it's a globe description is incorrect. There's no description of a globe in there. There's a description of a sphere, but no globe.
Yeah, I understand that, but the point I'm making is that as soon as we put the 2 protractors together, we are basically begging the question of antipodal. We are putting the southern stars underneath the northern stars and the northern stars above the southern stars.
What's wrong with that? What's wrong with
I
that?
agree
That's a
with
flat
Brian
Earth
on that.
claim.
It's no
What's wrong
reason.
with that? That's a flat Earth claim.
Yeah, it is, but would it not be more in line with reality where we don't have a center point, we just have a horizontal baseline, and we are taking perspective measurements of the celestial bodies above our horizon? Wouldn't that be more correct?
We could discuss that, but I don't think they're ready for that much thought of it. Like if they want to, I'm just saying if they want to assert anything, they're going to need a flat plane for it.
Well, it'd be interesting to see if they will be willing to fight for the antipodal flat plane. That we
they
don't
have.
experience.
Now you're in
We don't
agreement.
experience.
Hold on. Now you've come to agreement with that statement, right? So what you're saying, Brian, is, well, that let's see if they utilise the upside down antipodal positioning of a flat plane sandwiched on top of another flat plane with the perspective view as you describe it from your vantage point in a Polaris-centric manner, if you're going to depict it in the way I'm about to put on screen.
Yes, but you missed that last part I said. The last part of the sentence was that we don't experience. That's the point.
Sure.
So not only will they have to use a flat plane, but they're going to have to come up with a scenario that we don't experience. And that's the point I'm making. We don't experience this antipodal thing. We experience the same horizontal baseline at all times when we're using the celestial sphere model. Sorry, Neil.
There's no stars underneath me, right, Brian?
Exactly. Unless they want to prove
but I mean, if you're arguing about the shape of Earth, I'll go ahead and concede antipodal. We'll need a flat plane to get it. I don't care. Like, assert whatever craziness they
There you
want.
go. That's a fair point. That's a fair response. In fact, that's an excellent
I
response.
agree with him too.
No worries. So I'll concede to the fact that you need one flat plane on top of another. No worries. Still need a flat plane then. Just need 2 of them.
I wouldn't do that. Yeah, that's John. I'm not John. John makes his own decision. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't give them an antipodal flat plane because I don't experience that. Nobody experiences antipodal.
I didn't say you had to accept it, but you don't have to argue it.
You don't have to, but I prefer to argue for just for what we experience. If we're going to use the model,
I think the subtlety has been lost. What John's saying is, you can argue the nonsensical, presumably unproven claim, baseless assertion, when they say there's antipodal positioning. Well, like we would argue if we're not talking about the celestial sphere model, 2 flat planes on top of each other, antipodal description. We're talking about a globe with you on the top surface and then on the bottom surface being antipodal. We would still say that, as Brian is, that you're begging the question of being antipodal. And you'd rather argue the fact because that's not something we observe and certainly won't be something they're proving when they're making that baseless assertion, right? Well, John's saying, well, yeah, that may very well be the case, but you don't have to argue it. It's unproven. They're not going to be proving that baseless assertion. So therefore, just go for the win. You still need a flat plane for it.
Yeah, my issue would be handing. Sorry,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm just saying I see what John's saying now. I was lost a little bit, but now I understand what John's talking about.
Well, let me throw this at you. This is why I won't go into that with them, and I won't give them the antipodal flat plane. Not only because we just don't experience it, and that's not how the celestial sphere model, as they call it, is used, because it's not It's a celestial personal protractor model, right? But the point is that they automatically have to believe that they're getting angles antipodal from each other for the north and south stars. When you put two protractors together, the horizontal baseline of the protractors, you put them together, one north, one south, you're giving them the internals of their globe to keep their BS alive. I don't see the point in doing that, because they are already claiming they're taking angles, that they're moving the angles from a tangent plane to the center of the globe. If you give them antipodal as well, you're giving them something. You're actually handing them a step that they don't deserve.
Okay, before you respond, John, just for the audience's benefit. So on screen now, right, we've got how are you going to get this angle measurement? Let's pretend this yellow disc is actually Polaris, right? And what Brian's saying is, why would I concede that this angle measurement that's going to be taken off a plane, claimed to be a tangent plane, with an antipodal reversal of this, i.e. you flip this on a vertical axis, so it's upside down. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Well, to accept that, well, you're right way up, but your previous measurement's the upside down one, right? Brian's saying, well, why the hell would I accept that? Why would I accept that a measurement taken down under is suddenly the antipodal inverse of this depiction on screen? I'm not going to accept that. That's nonsense. What John's saying is, you're still going to need a flat plane for that, aren't you, right? So who cares? That's where we're at.
Yeah, I understand John's point. I'm not saying that his point is not valid. I'm just saying that I don't see the point in handing them a step that they need. I want them to have to really fight hard for everything. I don't want to give them that. They don't deserve it, because I don't experience that. No one experiences that in reality. So I don't want to give them even an antipodal flat plane. I want them to have to stick with the flat plane the horizontal baseline we use in reality. And I don't want to give them a separate horizontal baseline that's antipodal from that, because that's a step towards what they want, the argument they want to be able to make. So they show me they prove your antipodal. If you're going to be claiming that there's an antipodal flat plane.
We've both slipped on John now. Go ahead, John. Unless you haven't got
the step towards the antipodal or whatever, I'm sure they would love to argue whether you're antipodal or not, instead of whether it's a flat plane or not. I'm sure that is exactly where they would love to go.
Yeah, that's where I was going to summarise. Well said. I will just repeat it because that was what I was going to say, and I haven't got anything else to come back with. Yeah, their preference, Brian, speaking to you directly, would be to argue the toss about whether or not when I travel south, my measurement is antipodal from when I'm north. They'd rather argue about that than both measurements needing a flat plane. I think that's the stronger point here. I'm sorry, Brian. I should side with you because you're...
I understand that, but I still wouldn't. No, I won't, because I'm dealing with...
You didn't let me finish. You didn't let me finish. I said I should side with you because we have always taken that stance, haven't we? Hold on. What do you mean antipodal from my position? You mean when you go down there, you automatically assume that where you started was where your feet are pointing towards now? No. Why would I assume that? That's been our stance. So how can I disagree with you is the point I was going to make at the end, which is to say, to back 10th and hopefully bring him back into the conversation when he said, you're both right. You are right in many ways, more ways than one, in this particular instance, because we'd be taking a slight deviation. But I was going to disclaim that John isn't us in himself, is he? Because he's put out a challenge that says, I'll concede all of it. And in this instance, he's going, yeah, I'm just demonstrating out my personal position, John's personal position, refracted curvature's position, is to say, it doesn't matter. And here's another example of it not really mattering. They've still got to have a flat plane.
Yeah,
right, but if the debate is called flat earth debate, at the point that they concede, why do you want to argue further?
But see, my point would be that the personal celestial protractor model, as I am going to start calling it, that is something that we use on the surface of Earth. So as soon if I give them an antipodal flat plane, then I'm placing them at the center where they want to be, and then they have a center point that they can start claiming to measure angles from. I'm talking about, no, this is something that's used in your personal space wherever you are at that time, and you use the horizontal baseline that the Earth has. There's no antipodal going on. You're using that on the surface of Earth. It's not something you're bringing to the center of something. That a personal celestial protractor, a personal dome, celestial dome, you're using that on the surface of Earth. My point would be that as soon as you give them an antipodal one, that puts them at the center where they want to be, because they don't want to have to deal with the surface. They don't want to have. I'm keeping them on the tangent plane. I don't want them going down to the center point.
I'm just trying to keep them on a plane. If you look, to have a debate or an argument with someone, you need a point of contention. If the point is conceded, why would you continue to argue with that person?
Well, they have no hassle. See, because that's the argument has moved on a little bit with them. What I mean by that is I'm dealing with people, one person who's a well-known baller, who is okay with claiming angles from a flat plane from the center point of a globe, because he's also claiming antipodal, if you know what I mean.
He's claiming he measures angles from the center of Earth.
No, he's claiming that he'll use a tangent plane to measure an angle from the surface and then move that down to the center point of the globe. I don't want him to even get to move it down. I'm keeping it on the surface, because as soon as my point being with this, and I don't want to spend too much time on the show where people zeros out with it, is that as soon as you give them an antipodal flat plane where you put two protractors together, you're giving them their center where they want to be. I don't want them leaving the surface. I want them staying on the surface where we actually use the celestial dome model or protractor model.
No,
but you're surrendering. If you're keeping them on a tangent plane, you're keeping them on a curved surface in their minds. Why would you even bother with that?
They can believe what they want is hanging off the end of it. They're stuck on the tangent plane. The fact that the tangent plane.
Hold on. Stop. Your arguments become self-defeating. You don't want to take John's stance because it means you're giving them a bit of globe, but you're saying I'll keep them on a tangent plane. You're giving them a bit of globe, so you kind of
Well, I can't stop them begging the question of a tangent plane. I can't stop that, but I can not facilitate them going to the center of a globe.
Right.
That's my point.
This is where you've got to concede that John's stance is miles better then, because if you're saying that, then it comes back to the original point that they'd rather argue about whether or not you're antipodal, when if you've got to give them a bit of globe to be on a tangent plane to keep them on the surface, why not just take the win there and then? So we're going to need a flat plane for that. It doesn't matter if you're on upside down antipodal from your position when you talk about the second flat plane that you need. You need a flat plane. At which point you're not giving them anything. You're just taking the win.
Well, that's my point. Like, I'm keeping it on the tangent plane that they're going to make up in their mind. I'm not allowing them. Well, it doesn't matter. They're going to be begging that question.
You're keeping them on it. It doesn't mean it doesn't matter. Of course it matters. Tangent to a globe. So you're keeping them on the globe while you're arguing that you want to keep them on the surface, but you can't help how they beg the question of what the surface is when you're keeping them on a tangent to what? Plane? Doesn't matter. Yeah, it does. When you could have already took the win at that crossroads. Obviously, this means that you have to sort of concede defeat to John's superior point here, Brian, but it sounds like you're not going to.
No, and I'll tell you why. Because in my experience with them arguing this point, what they want to do is bring it to the center, so they can then start talking about measuring 60 nautical miles per degree along coast.
Center of what? Hold on. Center?
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Center of what?
Point that I don't want to bring them to.
Say, you haven't brought them to the center of what? You haven't told us the center of what? What have you brought them to? At that point, there isn't a globe. That's where we started, right? John explaining, well, where's the globe in this? There isn't one. So when you say, I don't want to take them to the center. No. You're just standing on a flat plane with a perspective view of the stars in that model. There's not taking them to the center of the globe burger unless they take their, look, this is how we show the celestial sphere model with a a surplus to requirements globe in the middle. And that's what we're going to the center of. But they haven't done that if you're only at the celestial sphere model. You're still just at the flat plane and can take the victory. It doesn't sound like you like this, but
sphere, when I hear celestial sphere, it means the same to me as the word atmosphere. You're begging the question for me.
That's what I've been thinking the entire time. Right, that's the reason I agree with you the most on this, because
Wait a
I hear
minute.
celestial
This
sphere.
isn't agree, disagree. I'm sorry, gentlemen. I'm
Oh, it is.
sorry.
Oh, contraire, John.
Hold on, though.
It is.
Hold on.
Hold on. 10th's picked up on it, and it was the reason I started this conversation. I'm not smiling and smirking because I wanted this conversation to develop this way. And the question that started was, what's the equatorial plane? So over to you, Brian, because you originally explained why both of you were right, because of the terminology that allows them to beg the question, right? It's a magic word, equatorial.
Yeah, you're begging the question of the center of a sphere, with the equatorial. You're begging the question of the center of the globe, because the
Right.
equatorial plane only exists within the globe.
Stop. Yeah, that's been reiterated, but now John's got to come back from that, right? Yeah, you're now winning. Notice how the sparks are flying off this sharp blade. No one's having their head chopped off. We are arguing about the refinement of an argument, just in case anybody didn't realise that. Just how sharp this blade is. I'm seeing the sparks fly. It's brilliant.
Can we go to master debaters once
Hold
everyone's
on,
done?
10th. Hold on, John. Right. What about this?
Doctor,
What about this defining word with equatorial? Then that's where we started, and hopefully where we'll get a decent response out of you on the fly. We'll see how it goes.
The equatorial plane is just the flat Earth model, as if Polaris was directly over your head. And they have, because the equator, there's no equator line on Earth. There's no such thing.
But it's the equatorial plane, John. Right, Brian?
It's a plane.
Yeah.
It's a plane.
But equatorial, what's an equator? What is that? Is that like a outside edge of a sphere sort of thing that would put you in the middle of it if you were talking about it?
No. It's derived from this movement of the stars.
It's derived from, but it does have its description at the centre of a sphere then?
No.
Yeah. What do you mean no?
Are you telling me that there is an equator on the Earth?
No, in the same way there's no refraction in terrestrial refraction, right? No, I know there's no equator. It's imaginary. But what is it in this linguistic magic trick? Well, it's the outside edge of a sphere right there. Is it not?
Right, celestial sphere.
No, because this is a magic trick. It's a magic word. So no, and yes, as 10th originally started with, because but no, because you're describing it within the context of that actual flat Earth model, but the word makes that area of equal elevation the outside edge of a sphere just by using the word, doesn't it?
Define equatorial.
Outside edge of a sphere.
Celestial sphere, correct.
I didn't have to say that though, did I? I didn't say that. Did I say that? Did it come out of my mouth? Did it need to come out? It didn't.
No.
Making Brian right.
No,
What's
it's
celestial sphere again?
Celestial sphere is flat Earth model.
Flat
Earth model.
Yeah, the flat Earth model with the celestial sphere. Yeah. Just because you say sphere doesn't mean you're saying globe.
Doesn't mean it means there's an equator either.
Saying celestial sphere almost sounds like you're assuming that the celestials, the sky, is spherical shaped. That's a little weird.
Yeah.
So I hear the same. Like I agree with Brian. Like I hear the same thing. Like atmosphere.
It has to be a flat Earth for that.
That's correct. It needs that qualifier. Hence, you're still in the superior position when you declare that, because all of this is moot. If you took the victory when John said you should take the victory, yeah, you're going to need a flat plane for that. End of argument. Right? The antipodal, who cares? Doesn't make any difference, because they need to use words like equatorial plane to beg the question of their sphere, to put them in the centre of it when they're talking about measuring planes. But ultimately, they're still, as John's superior argument identifies immediately, measuring planes at the centre of a sphere when they beg the question with an equatorial plane.
Yeah, but my point, I still would stick on my point that why would I put two protractors together to give them an antipodal flat plane? Why would I give them that? I don't see the point in giving them that.
Well,
I'd still
Stop. Okay. Let's not rehash the entire last 20 minutes. You are right, Brian. and more right than John. However, John's more right than you, though.
Right, but is this debate called antipodal debate? Is this the antipodal
This is
debate?
the real one,
room?
isn't it? No, it's not. It's called flat Earth debate because we live on a flat Earth.
Game over. Put
Game
your
over
car
the moment they
apart.
start using
Get you
it
some
and measuring
popcorn
it.
out and
That's
laugh.
it. They can beg the question of it being antipodal after they've measured it flat. Yeah, who cares?
When everyone's done, can you go to Master Debaters and look at some slides so people can follow through?
I'll put a link in the a Wikipedia link in the master debaters too.
Okay,
I would just like to point out, if you want to debate somebody or argue with somebody, there needs to be a point of contention. Why would you argue past the point that they concede?
But
Your
antipodal
possible
is the
point.
point of contention.
that's after the point. No. That point of contention. John's point is that point of contention comes after the concession that they're going to be measuring it flat.
No, it doesn't. Because what comes first is they are begging the question of a tangent plane. Second is they bring it to the center of a sphere. So when you give them a
sorry, you can't hear
celestial
yourself
sphere
clearly.
model-
Sorry. Let me just repeat back to you what you just said. First, we start with a plane. You said.
Yeah. First,
Yeah.
They start.
There it
They
is.
start.
But
Yeah.
first, we start with that
With a tangent
plane,
plane.
that flat plane that we're going to measure that's flat. Right? That's the first step. And then we'll put it at the center of a sphere with tangents.
Yeah,
Correct?
but this is my point. They start with a tangent plane and then want to move it to the center of a sphere. When you give them the celestial sphere model, you're giving them a center point with an antipodal flat plane. Well, I don't see the point in that when, if we stick with reality, they're not stuck on what they want to believe is a tangent plane, but you don't allow them to bring it to the center point. You, from that tangent plane, prove antipodal.
I gotcha. So if they're just going to start with the measurement of the angle, then John wins in his path, because it's just like, well, all right, so we're measuring a flat plane, game over. However, if they're subtle and clever anti-flat earthers, they may start by asserting that we've got a tangent. Yeah, you're listening, Rufy. yeah, tangent. To what now? No, it's all refracted. You haven't got a tangent. That aside, Brian's point is that once you've got them on the tangent plane, they're also on a plane that they then need to move to the center of a sphere Earth, and you just don't need to let them because they're already on a plane. So in either event, it just depends on how your opponent approaches you with the begging the question that they're going to have to use. Either they're going to be begging the question of an equatorial plane, i.e. area of equal elevation for Polaris, that's to then, by magic, become the outside edge of a sphere, or they're going to start by saying, I've got a dingleberry Earth dangling below a flat plane, and in either event, you can take the win right there and then. They've started with the plane. Why let them go to the center? Why let them assume that the outside edge is somehow the outside edge of a sphere that you'd be traversing if you were at that edge, rather than the flat plane you're actually measuring in both instances? So you're still both right. But Brian is a bit more right than you, John. But also, Brian, you're so very wrong. Brian, John's just better.
Well,
You're just opening up a can of worms when you say tangent plane. You need to say planes. They need two of them. They need one for the star, so that's the GP, and you need one for the observer with the instrument called the sextant. That's his or her GP. Now you have two tangent planes. It doesn't work that way.
you see, the point I'm making is that in reality, when do we use what we call the celestial sphere model? When do we use that? We don't. We use a celestial dome or protractor model from the surface of reality.
That's on screen now. Just so you know.
Just
so you know, it's being talked about. It's on screen. So for the audience's benefit, this is what we're talking about in terms of the circle at the bottom, the flap disk. That's what you're actually going to be measuring, your altitude angle. And where is that? Well, this is the star that you're measuring in your view. That's you in the middle. looking out to measure an angle. The only way you're going to get it is by if this line between you and the GP of the star that you're measuring is a flat line, a flat baseline. That's how you get angles. That's how it's done. Now, in case you hadn't been following along, you can then say, oh, no, there's two of these, right? One's on top of the other one. They're both flat planes because you can only get angles from them. But then we're going to say that instead of this that you're seeing in the form of the stars, we're going to say that, no, you are actually at the center of a sphere Earth that will draw around you. And that looks something a bit like this. But obviously you can't be standing in the center of a sphere because I begged the question before we started this process that I was standing on the top of a flat plane tangent to the sphere. So therefore, this is a tangent plane that I automatically assume because I'm going to be measuring angles and I can't measure them any other way. That's why we've got this floating plank on top of a sphere with another sphere around it with you not at the center of it. So Brian's saying, well, why are we letting them move to the center? You know, this is what we're actually doing. And this is where they're going to take you. They need to take you from here to here.
Is there a positive claim of a tangent point on Earth?
They will always make.
And has that been debunked? And has that been debunked?
You're talking about the black swan. But when they're making the tangent plane, they're not.
Has
The
it been
tangent plane for
proven
them is
first?
at their feet. Sorry, Doctor.
I was gonna say, you're asking, has it been debunked? Has it been proven in the first
No,
place?
it was never proven, but it was a positive claim that they made. Without
Well,
proof.
true.
That was
Without
just
proof,
something they asserted, but it has been shown to be impossible.
Well, if Nathan shows 10th slide where it says altitude and azimuth, that is the real world application of what I term as the celestial dome or celestial protractor model. It's the personal celestial dome or personal celestial protractor model. That is the real world application of that. So I don't see, and that has nothing to do with the center of a globe.
Well, it's a hemisphere.
Unless you guys start calling it the apparent celestial sphere.
That's half of a sphere.
Chocolate. It's already mentioned by them. It's imaginary. Can we get to this?
Thanks.
Yeah, but it gets confusing. I think Chocolate is right. Why don't we start calling it the apparent?
It's already called that.
Yeah,
goodness, you
Tank
guys-
is right. If they already defined it as imaginary, then they've already
Can we go
done the
through
work
the
for it.
slides?
Gotcha.
Can we go through the slides, please?
Yeah, which one would you like to start with? I've been talking my way through them. Thank you for providing them. Where would you like to start as they're your slides?
How about the beginning, the first one? The celestial sphere, a globe of the sky.
Got it.
All right, an imaginary bubble that surrounds Earth onto which all the stars are positioned. Okay, now you got to realize when you're looking at all this stuff, the textbooks and everything else, you have to realize they're reifying it as an exact duplicate of a sphere Earth with latitude and longitude lines that are exactly represented on the inner surface or outer surface of that celestial sphere and the stars attached to them. Okay, so everything is lockstep. All right, you've got this big old celestial sphere where the little Earth in the middle, and all those things are lockstep. But this is all a lie, but this is how you got to see it if we're going to go through these slides. This is what they're trying to do. This is why flat Earth angle measurements to players kill them. All right, like the Earth's celestial sphere has a North Pole and a South Pole and an equator. No, really, does it? I just said it was imaginary. Next slide. Now you see this viewpoint, and there's your longitude lines. And of course, you would also have latitude lines. And then you have the stars, and it's all projected onto the Earth. This is the way they want you to see it, that this isn't reality. Next slide. Now, a little hint of reality. We have a tangent plane with an observer on it in this black and white version. The celestial sphere is seen from the outside, showing an orthographic view of it. So now, wait a minute. The measurements, according to them, are coming from the center. Why is the guy standing on the tangent plane on the surface? That doesn't make any sense. So you can see it starts breaking down when you get into some details here. Next slide. So this is what you need. You need the sun over a plane, not an equatorial plane, but just a plane. And you need an observer with an angle measuring device called the sextant. And you can get your elevation angle and you can work it out. So this is what's happening. This is what the guy in the previous slide was standing on, the surface of something that doesn't exist. Because even in their books, all the measurements are coming from a cutout version of the Dingleberry globe Earth from the equatorial plane. Of course, they have to stick that in, as Brian said, it doesn't exist. Next. Oh, well, let's look at this guy. So this is where the measurements are coming from the center. Well, I'm not at the center. You just showed me on the top with a plane underneath 2 slides ago. So now my eyeballs are at the center. What's going on here? Okay, but all of that is surplus to requirement. Next slide. The one that Brian says, altitude and azimuth, your local view of the stars, the way your eyes work. I mean, you got 90-degree right down the middle, and you look to the left or right of your eyes, wherever you are now in your room, your office, it starts going down to 0, just like this picture here. This is what's happening here. Okay. Next slide. Now you can see the surplus to requirement. They call it the invisible hemisphere. Yeah, it's invisible. It doesn't exist. None of it exists. We live on a disk, an equatorial plane, they call it, but it's really an irregular plane that we live on. And the stars are moving above us, and our view isn't forever. So we get that star movement that's personal to each of us. Next. Now you've got a problem. You've got the center of Earth where it's all supposed to emanate from, where no one's at. You've got a person here above the sea level, that's the height of I. And then you've got a dotted line saying actual horizon if the height of I is at 0 minutes, 0 seconds. Well, what is 0 minutes and 0 seconds? Well, that's their equatorial plane. That's where it's all level. Wait a minute, that's supposed to be at the center of the Earth, though. Why is it up here? And why is it going into outer space, it looks like, which doesn't exist either? You see, this is the dead giveaway right here. That's their tangent plane, which is the irregular plane we live on. Everything under the dotted line is surplus to requirement. The next slide. You're in an airplane above the Earth, and you're using an artificial bubble horizon sextant. And the plane of the celestial horizon, which means it matches the equatorial plane exactly and goes all the way to the imaginary celestial sphere. Then what is that disk on top? Isn't that kind of like that plane the guy was standing on? Well, with the sextant when he was on the Earth. This is showing you that a plane at 5 miles up is going to have the same thing as if you were at the center of the Earth. Let that one ruminate in your mind. Next slide. Horizon coordinate system. Now this is where they die. See that top part? That's what Brian's been arguing all the time. That's the observer's viewpoint. That's what you see. You need a flat, irregular plane to do it on. That's what John's been arguing all the time. John's got a very high level argument. It ends right away. Brian takes away all their begging the question and ends it right away. You're both right. I'm done.
Thanks, Tent.
Yeah, indeed.
Nathan, would you go to the Earth and Sky, where it says the Earth and Sky? That one that Tent put up.
Yeah.
Thank you. As you can see, they're calling this, it's off to the left, the celestial sphere. It says, if an object is above the horizon, it is visible. If it is below the horizon, it is blocked from view by the Earth, right? As you can see, you have, within the diagram, you have a visible hemisphere where the person is standing, and underneath that person is the invisible hemisphere. So, like when you're giving them a celestial sphere, you're already begging the question for them. That's my point.
Okay. John, any last comment before I round out the live show and ask everyone to stay tuned if they're watching an after show?
No, if they're claiming that they're existing on a flat plane in the middle of a sphere, that's not a globe claim.
With that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming Streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on an after show. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!